Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Strange Planet. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review and hit that like button. All right, on this episode, we're going to dive into an electrifying interview with Sir Blake Sinclair, author of Roswell and the Intergalactic Mission. This is about a son's quest to decode his father's covert role in the 1947 Roswell UFO crash, igniting a cosmic journey of self-discovery and interstellar secrets. Haunted by childhood astral voyages, lost time, and vivid ET visions, Sinclair uncovers his dad's classified photos of crash debris, alien bodies, and survivors, fueling humanity's technological revolution, weaving UFO lore with hypnotic revelations of how his own galactic roots, ET encounters, and ancient relics were channeled from ascended beings. The book also shatters cover-ups and awakens our stellar destiny. From hidden bases to our return to the stars, this dialogue fuses science fiction, spirituality, and raw truth for a paradigm-shifting experience. Sir Blake Sinclair, CEO of Ultima Unlimited, Inc., is a licensed occupational therapist, certified health coach, PEMF specialist, Reiki practitioner, and globally acclaimed blogger. As a Grand Knight Commander of the Equestrian Order of Michael Archangel and Goodwill Ambassador for the House of Garios, he's featured in Marquis' Who's Who and formerly affiliated with the Mount Shasta Authors Guild. He's the author of 3 celebrated books on spirituality, enlightenment, metaphysics, health, longevity, and wellness. He created the Universal United Meditation Method and I Am Wellness Method. In his revolutionary new release, Roswell and the Intergalactic Mission, he merges profound spiritual insights with shocking revelations about his father's key involvement in the Roswell UFO crash. Sir Blake Sinclair, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm good. It's an honor to be here again.
All right. So let's just dive right in and let's talk about first of all, who was your father? What did your father do during the 1940s?
Well, that's a good question because when I was young, I didn't know a whole lot of what he did. I knew he was part of he worked at White Sands Missile Range, and I knew that he was somehow involved in photography. But other than that, I didn't know much about him. And one day when I was about 18 years old, I was watching the movie or documentary film about Roswell incident. He walks beside me. He's holding a cigarette, and he says, "I was there." I said, "What do you mean you were there?" He said, "Well, I developed the pictures for the Roswell crash." I said, "Wow, that's exciting. Can you tell me more about it? Did you see the pictures?" He goes, No. I developed the pictures upside down. That's top secret protocol." He walked away kind of smiling, and I just I sighed and, "Oh, wow. Oh, well, you didn't see anything." So I left it alone for many, many, many years. I talked about it a little bit last year on the many talk shows. I think even I mentioned it in yours as well.
You did.
But I didn't know much more than that. And so I started to explore my father. Now, last year, my brother was really sick. So I spent a lot of time with him. And he told me things about my father that I've never known about. He told me my father was working at the White Sands Missile Range, and he met Wernher von Braun. To me, he's the founder of NASA.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot for the NASA space program through his V2 rocket technology. And he also, when my brother passed away, there was a funeral. So I would meet different family members I hadn't seen in a long time. And one of my cousins was a commander in the military. He was part of a war hero. Only 2 people survived in the whole platoon. And he told me that my father spoke German. I said, "He did? I didn't know that." I mean, I could hear him speaking German every now and then. And he also, he photographed or filmed the first testing of the nuclear bomb, where Oppenheimer, he named it Trinity.
Right.
So he had them. There was rumors that he had met Major Marcel, and he's the guy that's the first military person, intelligence officer, who went to the Roswell crash site. He found the pieces, the artifacts, the debris. And so I thought that was kind of far-fetched, but as I researched more and more, I started to find out that my father was involved quite a bit. Now, White Sands Missile Range was considered the Area 51 of the 1940s. So everything top secret happened there. So first thing they did was that tested the first nuclear bomb. And that was significant in itself. And then the second thing is that he did was the V-2 rockets. Those were rockets retrieved from the Nazis during the war. And they were like a long-range guided missiles. And they were testing it. They were trying to reverse engineer it. So he filmed it. He took pictures. So he didn't just develop the pictures. He was much more involved in that. Then, of course, the third thing that happened was the Roswell crash. Now, prior to that, there were sightings of UFOs already. There were sightings in the 1930s. I think there was even one crash back in 1933 in Italy.
Yes.
So, yes, so they retrieved that and they were analyzing that. And then in the 1940s, I think even 1947, the same year, Kenneth Arnold had seen the UFOs at Mount Rainier, I think like 7 to 9 of them.
Yes.
And even before he saw them, there were some sightings in, I think, Bakersfield area. So there were sightings around the world. Eventually, before the crash of 1947, the famous one, there was one that happened like shortly after the testing of the nuclear bomb, almost a month after that, in an area ironically called Trinity, New Mexico. And there was a couple of beings there, and it was discovered by 2 young ranchers. So, but eventually, that crash happened in 1947. By the way, going back to 1945 crash, according to one of these scientists, that crash, the debris was brought over to White Sands Missile Range. So my dad may have seen that as well. But he mentioned specifically the Roswell incident. And when that happened, all the people there talk about Roswell, but they don't talk about the White Sands Missile Range. Even Donald Smith, the lead, the investigator in the whole world of UFO, he talked about that. He talked about how the UFO, the crash, was brought over to White Sands Missile Range.
Right. Everyone focuses on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
That's right.
And supposedly some wreckage may have been taken back to Texas, an Air Force base. But yeah, you're right. We don't hear about White Sands. So just before you continue, so based at this stage of understanding of your father's background, he is charged with what, documenting both with still cameras and with movie cameras, all of these. Well, you mentioned the atomic missile, the atomic bomb test.
Right, that's right.
And he's charged with photographing and documenting what UFO crashes and so forth.
Right. Yeah, but I think that's not the only thing he did. He was involved in more things because it was top secret, so he didn't talk about it. But he did mention to like a family friend that he was kind of bothered by one of the things he did, which had to do with manipulating of people's mind and emotion, some kind of testing. So it bothered him that he was somehow involved in that. So it could have been, some top secret things of understanding human behavior early on, the manipulation of the human mind. But he had a top secret life, so what I researched is what I found out, but he may have been involved in more details.
Did your father have a background in psychology? It sounds like you're talking about what, some sort of a mind control experiment?
Yeah, as far as I know, he didn't, but he may have been supportive in that environment, possibly filming it maybe, and while people are doing experiments in that capacity.
All right. And so, growing up as a kid, was your father still involved in photography? I mean, did you see any canisters of film lying around and wonder, what's this all about?
I did. I did. I see some cameras, but it seemed like after the military, he just kind of gave that up. He just left the camera alone, and maybe he took some pictures early on, but that part of it he put aside. But I want to get back a little bit to the Roswell crash.
Yes.
It's pretty significant. And I was mentioning about the sightings of the UFO, and they were happening even at White Sands Missile Range. So he mentioned about seeing these flying saucers. That's what he called them. And so I said, okay, that's interesting, but maybe he's the only person. But as I researched it, so even Donald Smith said that the other people at White Sands had witnessed it too. In fact, there were like 2 to 3 naval officers who had seen these flying discs, and they were flying at supersonic speeds. Suddenly they were there, and then suddenly they were not. So my father had this fascination with them. He called them the higher dimensional being. That's what he called them. And he knew it wasn't from this planet. And that's before the crash. And he always wanted to meet them somehow in some way. But to his surprise, he was thrust into the center of this. And so he had to go there. When it happened, of course, you had to film it. And so he was there filming the spacecraft, and he had to even enter into it. So from the description that I got from people that he has shared information with, it's a very simple design. It's very small spaceship, not too tall. And it has some kind of panel in there, kind of metallic panel that had a groove, a small groove for like a small hand, for the alien's hand to kind of control the spaceship.
We're talking about we're talking about the craft that crashed near Roswell.
Yeah, near Roswell in the area of Corona.
Yeah.
Well, that's where most of the bits of pieces that happened there. And the actual crash was further east. But when it was brought over, he had filmed it and he got into it. And he had seen the dead aliens. He saw at least 3 of them. They were like 3.5 feet tall, really big eyes. And then when was living was taken away. But something really extraordinary happened, though, and I just found this out a couple of months ago, that when he had this encounter with this, and going into the UFO and interacting with beings, somehow something happened to him. Something downloaded into his mind from the cosmos, like a cosmic download. And he began to see them as having a soul. And he also started to see them in terms of what's going to happen in the future. It's like they gave him like a download of what to see in the future. And he saw that there was a collaboration between humans, aliens, and hybrids for the benefit of humanity in the future. So he started to have a vision of things. And I think at that time, he didn't know what to do with that information. He thought it was just crazy. So the best thing for him to do was just keep quiet and just shut up for the rest of his life. Now, in some of my books I mentioned about my father, he had a very turbulent life. He was very volatile, very explosive. And I used to wonder, what can make this person become this way? And now, after I analyze his life, I realized that he had to hold so much secret. Because in the military, if you share this information, you'd be in trouble. I mean, when he developed the pictures, his buddy had told the whole group there at the White Sands that my father developed the picture. The next day, he was silenced. He never talked about it again. And in fact, it's possible that they move him to another place. But back then, if you talk about these things, you can get kicked out of the military, you can be in prison, or something worse can happen to you. So people were living in fear.
At this point, how are you learning about? I mean, your father mentioned Roswell in passing, but didn't go any further. So how are you then piecing these other details together, that he was there at the crash site, that he was inside the craft, that he's taking pictures of alien bodies? How did that information come to you?
So, as I mentioned before, my brother was really ill, and I spent a lot of time talking to him, and so he shared some of that information. And when we had that funeral, people came, and then they came forward and told me more information about my dad.
Okay. So he told them this account, and then they related it to you.
Yeah, family, friends, and so forth. And through that search and through all my connections, we tried all the different angles to get that information. And that's what I did. The process of interviewing people to find out what did they say to him, or what did he say to them, and then you kind of piece it together, and then to try to get some validation, because you have to tie into people who are there too. And so I was able to do that because there was a mention about my father meeting like Jesse Marcel, or Major Marcel Senior.
Yes.
And I was like, that can't be. So I started to talk to people. I talked to Prince Gerios, my royal brother, and he knew most of the top UFO players in the 80s and 90s. He said, why don't you reach out to Jesse Marcel III? And I did.
The grandson.
I got the grandson. The family, they preserved his legacy and the story. And so we talked on the text, we talked on the email, on the phone for a long time. And so I wanted to know about that connection about Jesse Marcel III, Major Marcel. And so I kept on asking questions to Jesse Marcel III. I said, hey, where did your grandfather work? He said, well, mostly in Roswell. Yeah. Something in me, you know what, this got to be what to it. I kept on asking him, I pressed further. And he said, well, actually, he's the head of intelligence of the nuclear program. So whenever Yeah, so that's where they met during the testing of the nuclear bomb with Dr. Oppenheimer, and they were all there together at this major event. In fact, that was the event that caught the attention of the ET beams. They started to come in more after that testing the bomb.
So,
But then,
sorry,
what
I just wanted to, because this is something I wasn't aware of. So, Major Jesse Marcel, Sr., who was the intelligence officer at the 509th Army Airfield, because there was no Air Force then. They did store nuclear warheads there. He was obviously charged to go out to the crash site, examine the debris, and of course, now we know the famous incident where he brings home some of this memory metal material and he's laying it out on the kitchen floor, and his son, Jesse Marcel Jr. the second, who I spoke with before he passed away, he talked about his memories of, playing basically with pieces of this craft.
Right.
So you spoke to Jesse Marcel the third, the grandson,
Right.
and he told you that Jesse Marcel Sr. also witnessed the atomic test, and he was there with Oppenheimer and your father.
Yeah, because he was the head of the intelligence of the nuclear program, so anything that had to do with nuclear testing, he was involved in that. And so this is one thing too. My father had mentioned to somebody that Dr. Oppenheimer had a really odd personality. So I have no idea about Oppenheimer. And then Jesse Marcel said, that's interesting. My grandfather said the same thing. So it kind of ties in the two guys together, to what capacity, how close were they? I don't know, but they at least they were in the same place at the same time.
Right. Can you tell us your father's, at the time, his rank and his name?
He was a sergeant. Sergeant Fei Wing Lu.
Okay. And did Jesse Marcel III, did he have any documentation, any record of your father, his name mentioned anywhere in any documents, or?
No, he didn't have that. In fact, it's very hard to get documents like that. Even Don Smith said that if you investigate, sometimes because it's top secret, they'll say that he never existed because top secret things. It's like working at Area 51. So he said that he won't be surprised that, even his identity is not there because it's something that's so top secret.
So if you tried to find a record of your father's work at White Sands testing grounds, you wouldn't find it, in other words?
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's possible that we can find it, and that's one thing I would like to find. I mean, the only thing I have is a picture. I have a picture of him there with his buddies. That's the only thing I have left of it. I have a picture of the V2 rockets that he took a picture of. And I have stories that tie him in. And another story, too, is about Wernher von Braun. They had a close alliance. And my father this Wernher von Braun, he was like a mentor to my father. And you think about it, because my father was working there before Wernher von Braun came. They were working on the V2 rocket technology, trying to reverse engineer it, film it, analyze it. And then after the war, Wernher von Braun comes with his entourage. It was through the Project Paperclip, like 125 scientists. And then they start working together. And again, in Germany, they didn't have a lot of funding for the research. And then when it came to the United States, there was plenty of funding for that V2 rocket program. So they worked together. And then you had a UFO crash. You'd think that Dr. Wernher von Braun wouldn't be part of that. I always had a suspicion and intuition that, yes, he would be there. So I started to research that as well. In fact, one time I did a presentation at a workshop, and it was Dr. Desiree Horkak, and she had mentioned, after listening to me, that Dr. Wernher von Braun, he knew the whereabouts of the aliens.
And Wernher von Braun was present at Roswell after the crash. That's your information.
Yes, and so I was fascinated by that. So I researched further, and I actually found an article, an interview with Wernher von Braun, and he talked about his encounter with the crashed UFO, that he had seen it, and he saw the spacecraft, and it had kind of organic property. It was like a metal, but not quite like that. It's like a living thing. And then he went inside of it, and then said same thing like when my dad said. It's very simple. There's not a lot of things in there. And then he saw the dead bodies, of course. At the time he saw the dead bodies, they were under a military tent. and he described the bodies kind of like a rattlesnake skin. Yeah, but somehow he felt like the aliens and the UFO craft, the flying saucer, had some kind of symbiotic connection, and they would connect to that UFO just through the mind or somehow, but they were connected as one. So it was fascinating. And so when my dad and many of the soldiers, because when they had to clean up the place, so it took so many soldiers to clean up all the debris, that the famous tin foil. So they would pick it up and they would crumple it. And when they release it, that tin foil will expand back to its original position. And my dad mentioned that it had this organic property to it. And it's similar to what Werner von Braun said about the UFO. It's kind of biological, it's like not a dead thing, not just a piece of metal. It's like a living organism or something like that. Hard to explain, but some technology that we don't have. And then the story gets deeper though.
Okay.
I started reading more and more, and one day I happened to come upon a video or a posting from Uri Geller. You remember this guy?
Oh, yes, the psychic, yes.
The psychic and the mentalist. He can bend spoons. Anyway, he had a kind of a posting of a video that was made about his life, and kind of like a documentary animation film. And in the film, it shows that he was invited as a young person to visit Werner von Braun. And so he visits him, and Werner von Braun gives him a piece of a metal. He holds on to it, and all of a sudden he says that this thing is not from Earth. He knew it was from somewhere else. And then so Werner von Braun gives us a bigger piece of metal. He feels it says the same thing, and then Werner von Braun confesses that this is part of a UFO. I don't know if it's the same Roswell UFO or another one, but it's possible. And, the Germans back then, they had the special clearances, and so he had the ability to get these pieces that no one else could get. Wow. And then he invites him later on to go down to the outside, and they go on a limousine. They drive to this secret base of NASA. They go down 3 flights of stairs. So he's told to put on this Antarctica jacket, a coat, keep it nice and warm. So they go to a facility. The facility opens up, and guess what you see in there?
I'm guessing alien bodies.
Right, they're in these chambers, and supposedly Uri Geller had a little secret camera that he took pictures of these aliens, and he says he'll release it, when it's time to release it. But that ties into everything, Werner von Braun, my dad, the crashed UFO. This whole thing is all about. We were validated by this visit of the crashed alien, and then the one survivor, and that was the most important thing. And people don't talk about that. And this has survived, and some people believe that it died in 1952. Others believe that they lived longer, but it survived. Not only did it survive, it made contact. Depending who you talk to, some people say it was the military who reached contact with the alien, which is kind of hard to believe, but other people say it was the ET that connected to its ET beings in planet Serpo. So eventually there was this cultural exchange program that took place. Do you remember watching the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
So at the end, they had a UFO, and they had these soldiers going towards the UFO.
Yes.
So that was based on that alien that crashed at Roswell, who made that eventual connection. And they had this 10-year cultural exchange program. So that was very important that we worked with this ET. They call it Eden 1, the first one. And
this is one of the this is the surviving alien from the Roswell crash.
Oh, that's right.
Was able to put the military in touch with the home planet, and they initiated this 10-year-long exchange program where U.S. military personnel would go off planet and exchange. So they would send extraterrestrials to our planet.
I think that there was one ET that was left behind. So depending on what article you read, there's different versions of this. But the fact of the matter is that there was a visit from the planet, and it was filmed. You could see the UFO coming, I think, at the Holloman base. And some people even say it was the White Sands missile range where they landed. So, but it doesn't matter which base, but somehow they came. They visited us, and there was an event between humans and the ETs. and some of our men went with them for this 10-year mission, which actually I think lasted 13 years.
Did your father, do you know, did anyone make mention of your father filming any of the interactions between the U.S. military and this surviving alien from Roswell?
Well, yeah, he mentioned not the surviving one, only the dead ones. I think he even filmed them when they were trying to do some kind of testing on them, testing their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I don't know. I don't have that information. He may have done it, but I just don't have the information so far. If I do more research, maybe I'll find it. But right now, I don't have that information. But I wouldn't be surprised because he wasn't the only photographer as well, but he was an important one. And he had that special alliance with Werner von Braun. So I'm not surprised if he did. So I'm going to continue to explore and research further to find out.
Did any of the people that you talked to who knew your father mention seeing any of these photographs?
Well, as far as photographs, it can't, because these information are given directly to the Majestic 12, probably to Project, all the CIAs, FBI's, all the important people in the top secret. So if he did leak it out, he would have been killed instantly. That's how important it is to national security.
Right.
You can't got this information. I think some of the film footage may have been leaked out somewhere. I'm still trying to find that. I was shown that one time by a super soldier, and he wants to keep his name anonymous, but he showed me a clipping of it. It was like maybe 3 to 5 seconds filming of this, what happened during the time when they were checking out the aliens and the UFO. And that was very fascinating. And that film may have been filmed by him.
In addition to the Roswell crash, was he also trusted to film and photograph other crash sites? Do you know?
No, he may have been, but as far as only information he mentioned about, and the people that he shared information to, this is all we have. But I don't limit him because he had mentioned things about the other things that he was involved in. And so that the more we dig deeper, the more we find out about what he did at White Sands. And only through the investigation can I find out further, but he himself would not talk about it.
What about your? Is your mother still with us?
No. She passed away many years. Both of them are gone.
Okay. Did she ever make mention of conversations with your father about any of this?
No. My mom was a pretty simple person, and I'm sure if he told her about it, she'd probably say, "You're insane." That's the kind of person he is. So, and in fact, I think that's what happened. I think he tried to share to somebody one time, and they made fun of him. And so I think he had to kind of internalize it. So he only released bits and pieces to different people that he would trust. And I think it was his hope that one day that information would get to me. And it was like a mystery. He left me like breadcrumbs. And through my research in the past year, that's how I found it. And the only reason why I bothered doing that is because, I'm connected in some ways to the intergalactic realm as well. And they wanted me to write this book, which I didn't want to write a book about this topic of Roswell, about aliens, about ufology. And so they started prompting me to research further. And people on TV show, they were saying, hey, maybe you should do more hypnosis to explore some of the things that happened to you as a kid. So as I did that, I saw more things and more insights. Then I investigated my father. Otherwise, I would just let it go.
So, this gets us into the next big area of our discussion, and this is that in some way, maybe as you say, your father was leaving you breadcrumbs, and so began your own personal journey, discovering your father's Roswell legacy. And talk to me about how that helped you connect the dots to your own intergalactic origins, and then which led you to these hypnotic regressions.
Well, throughout my life, I had these encounters, and unfortunately, a lot of them I just pushed it to the periphery of my mind because I didn't want to think about it. Because whenever I share about it, people thought it was crazy. So I learned to repress some of these memories. But there was one strong memory that came up when I did a hypnotic regression, and I was just studying it at that time. And I saw myself, at a farm, and I was lost in the farm when I was young, between 6 and 8 years old. in Fairfield, California. I was missing for 1 hour. And then after many, many years, I did the kind of hypnosis. And then I saw that I was there with these beings. This is kind of like a praying mantis being and another tall being that was similar to it. And they took me. And that was a hypnosis done like 10, 15 years ago. So I did another one recently with Misha Johnston. She's a famous ET expert, intergalactic channeler, and a very special hypnotherapist specializing with ET contactees. And we did it, and I saw visions of me going into the craft, the UFO, and they were kind of scanning me and kind of checking me and trying to let me know that things were okay, and that this is a reality that I had to experience. So, I mean, you can get into more details in my book. I actually share the hypnotic regression in my book, but through that regression, that session, it opened all the repressed memories I had with the other contacts. That was not the only one. I had a contact experience at the Lake Tahoe, and that was with an Andromedan being. And the only thing I remember, vaguely, is that there was a blue being, and somehow that was all I remember. But through the hypnotic regression, I could see this blue being. I could see that it was an energetic being, and I couldn't see the face. And when I asked for it to reveal itself, I could see a kind of humanoid face kind of peering through this energy. But then in its natural form, it's energy. And it was telling me that I was a healer and telling me that, that's some of the things I need to do in this lifetime. And they're preparing me to do the work that I'm supposed to do. Of course, at that time, you don't understand all this. And so they plant that seed. So when the time is right, like this past year, the time is right, that everything just comes together. So there was that one time, and then I had a contact experience in San Francisco, and this was different. I had a contact with the Pleiadians, with one Nordic being, and it was through a kind of astral plane. When I was young, I used to astral travel a lot, and then I remember traveling one time, and then I met this woman, very tall and blonde haired, and she comforted me because I was going through a lot of like stress and family issues, and my parents were arguing all the time. And it was traumatizing for me. And so she kind of comforted me and took me up there and to show me that there was a different reality. There's a physical reality, and there's also this astral reality. So they were getting me ready, to experience the different aspects of consciousness. And so then I forgot all about this until recently. And so all these things came together, and I said, wow, I mean, there has to be a purpose. Why are they visiting me? And I think it started with my father, because he had that first contact. So they downloaded it to him. So in some ways that genetics, it worked its way. He was initiated, if you will, at Roswell. And then I was initiated upon birth with all these kind of cosmic phenomena and encounters, and learning early on astral travel. So then I started meeting all these people around the world, people who are contactees or people who are abductees, people who are even ambassadors for different ET races. And so, I mean, it's a lot. And people would send me pictures, pictures of aliens, pictures of UFOs that haven't been seen by the public. And so, then I get this kind of nudging. So when I write my books, I get downloads of knowledge, downloads of what to do. And so the Intergalactics have been downloading to me to write this book. And I was fighting it because I don't want to get into that world of ufology. It's kind of a stigma, and not everybody embraces it, and you risk losing friends and so forth. But finally, I surrendered because I had too much information, and I felt like the time is right because we're going through disclosure, and giving this knowledge and meeting the people that I need to meet to share this information. So the timing was right. So when I opened the door and said yes, then I met all these people like Laura Eisenhower, like Jesse Marcel III. All these people are highly involved in the ufology.
We should mention, just for those not aware, excuse me, Blake, for those not aware, Laura Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. We've talked about his supposed meetings with ETs at, I believe it was Edwards Air Force Base back in about 1953. And Laura, obviously a very prominent figure in ufology. You mentioned the downloads that you had, and I believe one came from someone named Ashtar. He was commander of the Andromedan Council. Do you think you were getting the same types of downloads, or was your father getting the same types of downloads that you're getting now?
No. Ashtar Command was actually downloading to one of my friends, was one ambassador. So he gave her that download for the message to it. And the Andromedan one was given to another friend of mine who was also emissary. Having said that, yeah, that's a good question, because I wonder where all this information comes from. I know that a lot of my writings, I've written 4 books, and a lot of my writings come from ascended beings. But through working with Misha Johnston, I came to realize that it's not just them. It's also the intergalactic beings. That's why the way I wrote my book on my third book, it had a lot of things talk about unity of the planet. And I kept on getting a nudge to write about some EP input. And it turns out that, yes, they've been guiding me to get information. So I explore that too. I try to find out who's downloading all this information. And so I work with this girl, and she's a galactic channeler as well. And she had downloaded, she doesn't know anything about me. And she downloaded the information and said that one of the beings was the Mantis being, and the other one, yes, was the Andromedan being. So there were like 3 to 4 different groups downloading information into my psyche to share to humanity through my books. And it's really interesting too. The interesting thing is that after I wrote my book, I sent my book to various people to kind of check out some very highly evolved yogis. And one lady, I think I mentioned in one of your shows, that she had a picture of like a capture picture of the alien at her property.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, she got my book, and within the first day of getting the book, she's starting to get like visits from like UFOs, like 7 UFOs. She had it like almost every night for about a week or so. And another reader, she's a very spiritual person, she read the book and she began having visits from the gray aliens. And they told her that, that not all of us are bad and we were just misunderstood. And so people are having these amazing experiences after reading the book. One person, she read 4 chapters and she began, and that's the lady who was the ambassador for the Ashtar Command. And then they wanted her to contact them. So it's kind of a book of activation too. It's not just a book about history and what happened. It's about disclosure. It's about who we are in relation to our galactic family and friends.
Roswell and the Intergalactic mission. What's happening with you now? Are you still receiving downloads? Are you still having close encounters?
No, I'm not having downloads right now. When they want me to write, they download. It's very intense because of the information, the knowledge, the wisdom, the vision, who they want me to meet. It keeps repeating itself. And it'll haunt me until I do an action. Either I write or I follow what they want me to do. But when they are finished with the transmission, it just stops. So right now, no downloads until they want me to do something. But sometimes I'll meet somebody, I'll give a strong nudge, like talk to this person, reach out to them. But other than that, they kind of give me a break. But they surround me with people that support me in helping to carry out this mission of a message to humanity.
During these hypnotic regressions, did you ever, have a recovered memory of a conversation with your father that you had long forgotten, maybe that even shed more light on this?
I didn't see any conversation like that. I was more exploring the repressed memories. But there was one thing that happened when I was doing the regression, the hypnosis, that I kind of went to this place, kind of like remote viewing. And this place was like probably in the 1940s and 50s. And it's possible that my father was involved in that. But it had something to do with these individuals being in this room, a kind of like interview. Or maybe their mind is being manipulated or emotions being manipulated. Some people call it MK Ultra. So I don't know if was he part of that MK Ultra. But I did feel a very strong Nazi presence during that time. It's very interesting. I didn't know about that project, the paperclip and all that, but there was that presence in that room, and that was very uncomfortable. So I think the possibility that my dad might have been involved in some ways in doing that.
Did you ever get the sense during your father's final days, and forgive me for prying, and I don't know what the circumstances surrounding his death, I hope he lived a very long life, but did you get the sense that he wanted to unburden himself, maybe like a deathbed confession, anything like that?
You know, he was trying to tell me at something at the end, and I felt so bad because he couldn't even talk anymore. So possibly, and I was trying to get him a pen to write. He couldn't even write anymore. So fortunately, he left these pieces of information with different people. So enough to get put together things, and they jive together. They jive together with these historical figures. It's not like there's something random. It all ties in together. And it,
Do you hold out any hope that maybe he hid the negatives from some of these photographs or films somewhere, maybe one day to be discovered?
no, no, because we moved out of that property, and unfortunately, the guy, my uncle who lived there, he got the people there to clean it out, emptied it out completely, and they put everything in a storage, and then somehow they put an auction, and unfortunately, I was hoping if anything it would be in that storage, but they auctioned it out, and so somewhere out there, someone might have it.
But meanwhile, the official photographs, the film from Roswell and other places, it must exist in a file drawer somewhere.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure different presidents have seen it, and I'm sure President Truman has seen it. Maybe even Eisenhower, Nixon, and all the people, in this top secret agency, CIA, FBI, and people who are privileged. But as far as my own contact, you asked me earlier. I'm supposed to have another contact in the future. One of my friend, Aviator's, he's like one of the top psychic in the world, and then I use all sorts of people to validate things, and she did validate things for me, and then she did have a vision of me in the future having another contact because she had seen contact experience not only in this lifetime, but previous lifetimes, and it is something that they follow you from lifetime to lifetime, and so that's maybe why my father was chosen to be there and to get that experience and to initiate me into it because I had already had this experience in another lifetime in Egypt. It sounds kind of crazy, but it all kind of works together. And if you study the history of ufology, Egyptology, ETs have been at Egypt way before it started during the days of the Anunnakis.
Well, it seems that these encounters are multi-generational. So it perhaps started with your father, moved on to you. I don't know. Do you have children? I mean, have they experienced anything like this?
Uh, if they did, they haven't mentioned it, but my sister has shared similar experiences with me. She remembers being in a UFO, and she remembers seeing like a ET, like an arm of an ET. So she has limited memories. That's how she usually starts. You have some memory, then you do hypnosis to explore further.
Have your communications with these, let's call them beings, did they have anything to tell you about what happens after death?
Interesting question. Okay, so because they didn't tell me, but during the time when my father saw the ET, the dead ETs, he saw that they had a soul. And that's interesting too, because it ties into that past life vision. When I did the hypnosis for the first time, I was just doing it for fun. And I ended up going to Egypt and I saw my life there and I saw my life as it was a privileged person, but I didn't like that life. So I decided to become a healer. And I worked as in the healing temple for many years. And when I died, I saw that. And I saw the soul leave the body. And that soul was met with ETs. And they greeted me to the next realm. And yes, so they believe that the soul moves on. The body that we have is just a vessel. And so these beings are very spiritual, very spiritual. They're advanced level. You imagine science, metaphysics, spirituality combined together. For the most part, these ETs are like that. And of course, there are a few that are kind of nefarious and kind of negative entities, ETs. But the majority of them, they care about us. They're part of our family.
If your father were alive today and we're in this new era of disclosure where we have whistleblowers like David Grush coming forward and testifying, and we actually have people testifying before Congress about the existence of secret UFO crash recovery programs, and David Grush has talked about the recovery of alien bodies. I think he used the word biologics, but we know what he meant. What do you think your father would make of all this if he were alive today?
I don't know. He would be excited because he was actually when he listened to Art Bell's show, Coast to Coast, all the time. And I think that was an outlet for him. He needed that for his healing. There's just nobody he could talk to. But hearing these people's stories about the Roswell incident kind of helped him relive it and feel like he's not alone. So he would be so happy and overjoyed. A lot of the things he would say, I know about that. He knew early on that many of the UFOs were made by human beings. He had like a vision that eventually one day that we made the UFOs, and most of them right now are made by our government or other people's government. A few are legitimate UFOs, but he already knew that at that time. But he just didn't understand the information why he was getting this. He thought he was going crazy.
I had no idea your father was an avid Coast to Coast listener. Do you think he was ever tempted maybe to call in anonymously and spill the beans?
It's possible. It's possible. But that's something I don't know about. Maybe we'll check the archive one day and find out. But he would go into his room and he would listen to this program. And I was like, what is this program? And I was surprised. And so last year I got into the program and I was talking about my dad in that show. And oh, yeah, you know about that. And so, yeah,
That was
it's
me.
amazing.
Yeah, that was me you were speaking with. Yeah.
That's right.
Remarkable. Roswell and the Intergalactic mission. So just in before we sign off here, just give us, what do you think is the main one or two takeaways for readers from this book?
Well, I think the main thing is that Roswell, although it's very important, it's a validation that there was an event. And number two, there was a survivor, and it not only survived, it worked with our government, and it shows that we can coexist. And all these phenomenons that happen, I even talk about in my book about orbs that people communicate with, and I send you some pictures of ones that people communicate with, and that when we evolve high enough to level in the frequency and in the way of living in unity, we can coexist with these beings easily. It's not like something far-fetched. At the soul level, at the consciousness level, we're equal. They may be more advanced in technology, but our technology is pretty much caught up with them in terms of UFOs. But they're still more advanced than us in the healthcare sector with their med beds and other technology that we haven't caught up yet. And they're ready to release it when the humanity's ready. So they're waiting for us. Our family they're not aliens. They're us. They're our brothers or sisters or cousins. And if we can evolve, they're just waiting for us to get on board, to move to the next level, to evolve further and pave the way for the golden age. We're just hanging on to this kind of low chakra reality, this kind of uncivilized world of living, hanging on to our nuclear bombs for survival. We don't need that anymore for the future. These beings, they found a way to coexist without doing that. They have power, but they live in a way that they don't need to use it to threaten anyone, but to coexist and live in unity. So it's a book about empowerment, a book about validation, and a book about activation. Read it and give it a chance to work through you and help you get activated.
Roswell and the Intergalactic mission, and how do we get a copy? Where do we find it?
You can go Amazon or you can go to my website at sirblakeSinclair.com. And after you read the book, if you buy the book, if you want, you can also send me an email through my website to show me that you got the book. Okay, I have a digital file of digital art I created that kind of complements the book. So if you show me that, I'll give you the free access code to get into it. It's beautiful artwork and some photographs of some real UFOs, aliens, and orbs. So it's worthwhile to check it out.
And again, we should mention that people that have read the book, friends of yours that have read the book, shortly thereafter reported having some sort of an encounter themselves. So who knows? You buy the book, you read it, you may have a close encounter.
That's right, a positive one.
A positive one. Sir Blake Sinclair, a great pleasure to speak with you again. Thank you so much, Blake.
You're welcome. Thank you.